So they think they're talking black. What fandom racism looks like, anti-blackness in the K-pop industry, and its fandom spaces by Stitches Media Mix. I started my What Fandom Racism Looks Like series back in February 2018. As I moved around fandom spaces and got more invested in Korean pop and hip-hop music and the fandoms they birthed, I found myself increasingly interested in the way that blackness and anti-blackness worked in the fandom spaces and this industry taking the world by storm. I've been working on this project within the overarching What Fandom Racism Looks Like series, which currently spans 4 finished essays and a bunch of videos and tweets and side stuff since April 2019. And I keep finding new content to research and write about. This video is just a part of how I do fandom. In this video, we'll be talking about 3 things. First, we'll briefly cover African American vernacular English, Black sense, and the way that many non-Black people use both of those things. Then, we'll be talking about the ways that Asian and Asian American people in and out of the celebrity sphere adopt what they think is Blackness as armor. Finally, we'll be talking about the ways that some Korean-based artists have in the past gone on Korean variety shows and radio shows and performed talking black as a way to entertain their Korean audiences. What is African American vernacular English? It's a dialect that is seen as directly opposite mainstream American English, which is usually assumed to be white, middle class, proper English. The Black accent, or Black accent, is generally used alongside African American vernacular English. It's a way of showing that the speaker is part of or aligned with Blackness. It's natural when it's coming from a Black person, but when it's not, it's part of this goal of portraying a street savvy and cool identity and even pushing back against linguistic propriety. So people will reach for Blackness and claim code switching. In Taylor Jones' 2014 blog post, What is African American English? We get this. African American vernacular English was born in the American South and shares many features with Southern American English. However, it was born out of the horrifically ugly history of slavery in the United States. Black Americans, by and large, did not voluntarily move to North America with like-minded people of a shared language and cultural background, as happened with waves of British, Irish, Italian, German, Swedish, Dutch immigrants. Rather, people from different cultures and language cultures were torn from their homelands and sold into chattel slavery. Slaves in the U.S. were systematically segregated from speakers of their own languages, lest they band together with other speakers of, say, Wolof, a West African language, and violently seize freedom. What is code switching? Well, code switching is a sociolinguistic practice where a person practices the use of a dialect, register, accent, or language variety over another to project a specific identity depending on where they are and who they're around. In the clip on the right, you can see a form of code switching with how then President Obama greeted the men in this room. The white men received handshakes, which still friendly, still cool, but the Black men in the room received daps, a personable, friendly greeting common within the African American community to essentially show brotherhood. Who uses the Black scent? Well, aside from Black people, non-Black people of color, and white people. Both groups adopt a Black scent in order to sound cool and fit into communities or cultures they're not necessarily from, which isn't necessarily Black culture. What I mean is that these people aren't necessarily performing for Black people, right? Their audiences can be comprised of other non-Black people of color or white people for both sets. Either way, a Black audience and trying to fit in amongst Black neighborhoods and Black people isn't guaranteed as a reason for this use. So, why use a Black scent? Well, some people, first, have claimed that they put on a Black scent to assimilate into U.S. culture. Then, many people put on blackness and therefore the black scent as part of it as a shorthand to coolness. Then, rebellion. Because of how blackness is perceived, performing a black scent becomes a way of showing your toughness. Because of how blackness is understood as toughness, as aggressive, especially through hip hop, people put it on and then proceed to raise hell for themselves in their home communities. Finally, to be hip hop. Many people actually just put on a black scent because they're rappers in whatever community they're in, and they're like, I have to do this in order to be accepted and welcomed. It's a speedy path to attempted authenticity. So the first reason to use a black scent is claims of assimilation. Blackness and the African American vernacular English have been claimed by some people as something they've done in order to assimilate into United States culture. Problem with that? No one in this country actually feels pressured to assimilate into blackness. There is no point or time where a non-black person has had to assimilate into and perform blackness in order to, like, survive. None. I mean, there's a legitimate fear of being punished from/by whiteness because you don't fit in and you don't speak quote-unquote correctly, but you're not going to be punished for not performing blackness. Not systemically, there's no forced blackness. It's not part of the American process, and anyone who argues that to excuse their use of African American English or a black scent and condescend to black people is a liar. So, I was first introduced to the dancer on the left side of the video, Hyewon Kim, who is H___1WON on Instagram, back when I was working on my two-parter article on cultural appropriation. She does tons of it, including blackfishing, which basically involves blackface because she does not look like that. She does not, neither does her friend. She seems to think that she looks cool. Thing is, for most people, their attempts at being cool through blackness don't go that far. So most of the people doing hood cosplay around the world aren't tanning themselves. They're not blackfishing. They're not wearing blackface. They use a black scent. They use slang. The whole thing is that worldwide people see blackness as a shorthand to coolness by people who don't have positive, meaningful interactions with black people. All they really know is what media tells them. And that's not always media that we are making ourselves as black people who love ourselves as black people. One of the ways that the black scent is used is as a part of a non-black person's path to establishing themselves as too tough to be messed with. As we'll see in the latter part about how identities are built on blackness, the go-to reason why many non-black people shrug on an unsteady black scent in African American vernacular English, especially when in new schools or trying to push back against society, is because blackness equals toughness and aggression to them. And if black people are like that all the time, non-black people doing it for a little bit should help them strengthen their image and be less messed with, especially when it comes to pushing against or pushing back against their home life or culture. I actually used this GIF from Tough Cookie from Zico because the song utilizes auditory and visual aspects of blackness and hood culture to set the rappers in the video and in the song itself as tough guys who are on the outskirts of society and clearly rebelling. So, let's talk about hip-hop. Authenticity, or the appearance of it, very important to hip-hop, and no more so than when Korean artists, especially newer artists or female artists, or both, try to be authentic to what their older, primarily male, peers find authentic in hip-hop, and what their own understanding, of course, is. Which leads to this stuff, like CL, in Grills and Gold Chains in her single The Baddest Female in 2013. So the hood cosplay was primary visual. If you see the video, you'll kind of ping that. She also delivers her verses during using a black accent. You know, like she doesn't just kind of use African American vernacular English, but she even explains it. With her, this is for all my bad girls around the world, not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good, you know? And it's so basic, but absolutely interesting that this is a lyric in her song, actually. Um, but the the combination of the black scent with the African American vernacular English with the gold chain with the grills in order to present herself as authentically hip hop. This actually brings us to sociolinguistic identity construction, something that can help explain why many Asian people in and out of celebrity are turning to blackness for street cred and or to entertain other people in their communities. So back at the start of November 2019, I started reading Angela Reyes' 2005 article, Appropriation of African American Slang by Asian American Youth, from the Journal of Sociolinguistics. At one point in the article, she makes a point about how some of her subjects used African American vernacular English in their day-to-day lives as a way to be aggressive and protect themselves. That slang makes Van feel black, reveals how her racialization and appropriation of slang relied on dual indexicality. By using slang to directly index herself as tough, Van reaped the benefits of the stereotype of the aggressive African American portrayed in popular culture as violent, criminal, and deviant. And in part of my ongoing thread on Reyes' work, I wrote the following tweets. And so, Van, like many other Asian Americans who adopt an aggressive, stereotypical performance of African Americanness, finds freedom to fight back against whoever by reaching for the kind of anger black people are assumed to carry all the time, and are punished for it, by the way. We're mistrusted for the anger they assign to us and assume we're waiting to unleash. They spread rumors about us because their assumptions are inaccurate, unkind, and assume meanness on our parts. In Tammy Winfrey Harris's What's So Wrong with Sounding Black, she writes that there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a black accent, except that in a society where whiteness is normative, a black accent is judged as less desirable. Making a call without your white voice on could mean the loss of a job, an apartment, any number of opportunities. So, as a matter of survival, upwardly mobile blacks learn to effortlessly code switch, that is, unconsciously modify speech to slip from one culture to another. Many of us reserve speech with ethnic markers for conversation with other people of our ethnicity. As Harris points out, there's nothing wrong with having a black accent, if you're black. If you're not black and you put on a black accent as part of your quest to appear hood and to fit in while performing hip hop or to entertain a similar audience of non-black people, that is wrong. That is mockery. And well, it's minstrelsy. If you haven't quite figured out that black people are people who deserve to be treated well and whose methods of expression aren't up for grabs as shorthand to cracking someone up, yikes. Just yikes. Now it's time to talk about talking black on variety and radio shows. One thing that I've come across while working on this video and my project as a whole has been that a lot of the variety and radio shows that these idols and hip-hop artists have gone on across the years are incredibly anti-black for a variety of reasons. I think that many of the people who keep up with them with these shows on Korean television are probably familiar with like blackface. But there's another form of anti-blackness that has come up on these shows and will come up again, probably, if it's not actively happening as I record this somewhere. Talking black, or imitating the way that black people supposedly talk for the purpose of entertaining their Korean audience. Note, none of these examples are within the past 18 months. However, they also don't have anything resembling a direct apology from the artist in question. Please feel free to link me to some if you find them, however, because I would love to correct myself. I decided to include these moments to show that even our faves, my faves for a few, can be intensely problematic, on the way to further unpacking why. In this article from Soompi in 2012, Girls' Generation singer Yuri got blasted, primarily by international and Black fans, for her acting Black on KBS's Invincible Youth. One of the things this article brings up is how some Korean netizens made excuses for Yuri's behavior, primarily downplaying it. One netizen was like, she was just trying to be funny, while another said, why is this becoming an issue now? And another one said that it's harmless. However, multiple Black people have spoken about their mistreatment and experiences with anti-Blackness while in South Korea, and a good deal of that can be tied directly into how Blackness is perceived and performed in the country. Think about how blackface is still common enough a sight on South Korean television now. Think about the fact that Black people are seen as permanent oddities and outsiders in a way that white people from the same places aren't. And think about the way that some netizens immediately made it about how not a big deal any of this was, and made excuses for Yuri, including saying that I don't think she was trying to do an impression of a Black man. Except Yuri was doing an impression of a Black man. So after she did an impression of a Japanese person, one of her cast members on the show actually suggested that she do one for a Black person, saying, if she's Japanese, there's also a Black person here. And what is Yuri's go-to for a Black person? It's to get hecking aggressive. It's anger. It's a threat of violence. It's, yo, you die. Isn't that fucked up? Seriously. And then there's Joohyun from Monsta X. 4 years ago, on MBC Entertainment's Radio Star, Monsta X's Joohyun decided to flex his muscles as an entertainer by doing his best impression of a Black man. In the clip from MBC, the image of Black comedian Tracy Morgan is used. And at the end of the day, he does this for entertainment purposes. Because being kind of aggressively Black, or being Black in general, is funny to him. And to the people sitting around him, including AAVE's Jimin. Disappointing, but unsurprising.
근데 이제 흑인들, Hey, what you talking about, man? I don't know what you talking about. No. 약간 이런 거. 빅 사이즈.
지금 흉내를 잘 낸다.
빅사이즈라고 한 것 같은데 빅사이즈.
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 그거는 잘 들어.
이태원에 가면 빅사이즈 저한테 항상 빅사이즈.
It's so funny. I should be laughing, apparently, like everyone else at that table, but it's not funny. Also, I actually don't know if at this point in his early career, this is about a year after their debut, I think, I don't know if Joohyun knew any Black people at this point, you know, but I do know that he listened to rap and enjoyed rappers and liked these artists before he was a part of Monsta X. And personally, I would expect someone who's interested in rap to realize that Black people are people, but apparently I just have really high expectations for people to recognize my humanity. Sucks, I guess. In March 2018, Red Velvet vocalist Wendy came under fire after an appearance on Talkmon, where she was asked about different English dialects. She chose to demonstrate the differences between Black and white girls she came into contact with.
Girl, what did you say, girl? No, you ain't doing that. 약간 이 표정도 막 이렇게 하고 몸을 좀 많이 쓰시면서
이거 엄청 좋아해. Wake up.
아, 맞아. 맞아. Wake up. 영화에서 본 것 같아.
What you say, girl?
As you can see in this clip, Wendy's performance of blackness is for maximum entertainment. It is the full-on, aggressive, neck-rolling, finger-snapping caricature of black girlhood. And she gets riotous laughter from her peers. And the thing is that this isn't even the first time that Wendy did this, y'all. Back in November 2014, Wendy went on C Radio Idol and did the same damn thing.
Miss Jung. No, you ain't talking to me. Miss Jung.
Y'all, Wendy lived in the United States and Canada for some of her childhood. She had to have come into contact with some black people in her time here. And yet all she took from the experience of going to school with and seeing black people around was that it's fun to mock us. It's funny to mock us. That's really fucked up, and I keep saying that, but it really is. Can you imagine being one of the black girls that Wendy knew, seeing that your old classmate, maybe a pen pal, is a star, and then also seeing that one of the things she's actually known for across international fan bases is talking black and mocking the black girls she went to school with? Yo, I would be mad as fuck in that situation. I'm mad now. Imagine how much madder I would be. And I've seen people dismiss Wendy's behavior because in the full versions of at least one of the clips, she's mocking both black and white girls. The white girls get the Valley Girl voice, so very close to mine. However, it's really important to note that, like, black and white women are treated super differently in South Korea by South Koreans, etc. We covered this in my video about hair, that black women in South Korea are subject to uncomfortable, invasive touches of their hair and skin. They're subject to outright mistreatment, rude comments, both about their skin tone and about, like, availability, sexual availability. And this is even in the heart of Seoul, which is supposed to be very enlightened. White women are not treated that way to the same extent. Like, at the end of the day, white women are still seen as human in South Korea. They're not seen as subhuman. They're not assumed aggressive like how Wendy portrays the black girls in her school. And they're not seen as super hypersexualized either. Choosing to perform black womanhood that way is wrong. If you're new here, you probably don't know that there are a few performers that I love more than Kim Namjoon, RM from BTS. I think he's an incredible rapper, brilliant as hell, and someone I feel has grown exponentially as a person across his time in the spotlight, which is actually part of why I'm bringing up something from his past in a critical light. Back in 2013, when BTS was but a wee baby boy group, the members went on Super Junior member Shindong's Shim Shim Tapa radio, where Namjoon affected a black accent and misused African American vernacular English as part of kind of like claiming talking black as a talent, which isn't great. In the segment, it's just a tiny part of the whole interview, really, but to convey this feeling of blackness, he's basically like, as you can see in the subtitle on the second image, yo yo, what's up? This man is Shindong at Shim Shim Tapa. We don't want to talk about it. You know what? And it's just, why? Why? The thing is that this isn't the only time this happened. What's kind of terrible is that Namjoon, almost 2 years later, went on to then do a similar performance of Talking Black on Star Zoom In. Like, to the point where the host mentioned that his talent was talking black, and instead of going, that's not really a talent, he just goes for the bit, y'all. He just goes for it.
개인기가 뭐냐면요. 흑인 영어래요. 어떻게 하는 거예요? 보여주세요.
So, man, his beats is cold and them rap monks.
What's wild is that at this point, still early on in their careers, Namjoon has already actually talked about how he understands that he misunderstood hip-hop, and that showed in how he interacted with the culture and the things or people associated with it. It's August 2015. In April of that year, in Single, he had an interview where he actually addressed his own misconceptions about hip-hop and the wrongful associations that he made connecting hip-hop with violence, and he apologized. He explained that he learned better, that he, during his connections that he made on American Hustle Life, he realized that he was wrong, and he's clearly like, I'm gonna do better. But then this is August of that same year, and he is talking black as a talent on this show, and it's really wild. It's just kind of disappointing because unlike many of the other people that you'll see across your time in Korean entertainment doing casual anti-blackness, Namjoon not only knew and worked with black people, he saw us as people in California when they were on American Hustle Life. He literally got schooled by black hip-hop artists that he held in high regard, but that speaks to how pervasive and kind of automatic blackness as entertainment and anti-blackness as entertainment are in South Korea, because Namjoon is incredibly brilliant, and he's also someone who outright obviously idolizes black hip-hop artists. He constantly nods to the genre and its importance in its life. He's one of those rappers who does know much of the origins of hip-hop, and he has a background gleaned from conversations with and research and reading related to hip-hop, right? And here he is backsliding into anti-blackness for the entertainment of his peers in Korea, which sucks. But as far as I know, while we haven't gotten a direct apology for any of this from any of these artists, Namjoon is, and actually Namjoon and all of the artists have not done this again, as far as I can find from researching. All of these artists have between 8 and 2 years of, that's Wendy, because 2018, have hopefully grown as people. They've not repeated their talking black incidents. Other artists have. There was an artist on, I don't remember her name, but there's an artist who, she was on Queendom, who did Talking Black on a variety show, another aggressive portrayal of black masculinity. Wild. Other artists have, other artists will, but these ones haven't, and I have to believe that these 4 artists have all grown as people and recognize that this form of entertainment that hinges on anti-blackness is actually harmful, and so they won't do it again. Aside from being minstrelsy adjacent and a thing worth mocking for entertainment, blackness is also seen as something aggressive and on edge. Like, that's one thing that does kind of connect the artists I've talked about. Their take on talking black across the board is just all like that. All of the artists taking on talking black as a talent or to entertain other Korean celebrities tend to adopt an aggressive tone and sometimes mannerisms that match. They literally couldn't imagine black people that sound like me. Part of why talking black is so problematic, aside from, mocking an entire group of people to entertain another, is that we don't all sound like that. Not every black person uses a black accent. Not every black person uses African American English. Not every black person is the stereotype that you are introduced to as a fact of television and media. And it reminds me of something that I came across while researching how non-black people consistently build their identities around blackness. A lot of these people are treating blackness as something they can put on and take off, but it's a very specific kind of blackness, a very aggressive kind of blackness. Part of the problem in how these idols take on talking black is that they're really only able to understand blackness in two avenues, as something that is funny, so you do it for humor, and something that is aggressive or scary, as a threat, defense, or something to be afraid of. And when they combine that, the joke is, black people are so funny and scary, wow. Which isn't a very funny joke to me. Right now on TikTok and other social media platforms, there's a whole thing where non-black teenagers and young adults perform similar super racist caricatures of blackness to audiences that can rank in the hundreds of thousands. They roll their necks, snap their fingers, and claim to be bad and bougie. All for the entertainment of, again, a similarly non-black audience. All while likely not giving a single shit about actual black people around them, outside of how they can be used for social capital or to better build their costume. But black people, we are punished for talking black. It's an actual thing, where folks claim code switching because they throw on a black accent to fit in high school or in underground rap communities around the world. We have to put on the customer service voice to be seen as harmless, to get jobs, and even to stay safe in some situations. So, like, why does this even matter? Okay. These artists are not actually capable of taking my rights away as a black person in the United States because of cultural appropriation or trying to talk black. However, what they are capable of is putting forward a negative image of black people on Korean television that is viewing us or portraying us as automatically aggressive and uncomfortable to be around. This disrespectful view of black people is then accepted as the norm by their fellow celebrities as well as Koreans watching and listening to these shows at home. In an observation excerpted from the White Normativity and ELT chapter of Race and Ethnicity in English Language Teaching, Korea in Focus, African American teacher Nathalie mentioned that, "I do believe that the negative image of African Americans received by Koreans is a result of how the media decides to portray us. Ghetto, loud, hypersexualized criminals. At times I will see women move their purse and hold it tight when they realize I'm standing behind them in line waiting for the train. Korean TV is no exception. There are regular depictions of black people by Koreans in blackface with afros, braids, and dreads. It's supposed to be funny, but when they are pimp walking, wearing a basketball jersey and talking black, it's really offensive. I honestly believe that it's just ignorance, but it's still widely done." While these artists in Korea are incapable of changing my way of life with their casually anti-black views on black people, the portrayal of blackness in Korean entertainment does make life harder for black people in Korea and who are coming into contact with Koreans who haven't unlearned anti-blackness gleaned from television and other forms of media. The anti-blackness on Korean television tends to be Korean people performing racist stereotypes and negatively impacts the direct lives of black people in Korea and outside of it. Like, that's not cool. Talking about this sort of thing matters because in 2020 and beyond, K-pop as an industry is interested in global music chart domination. It's one of Korea's biggest exports worldwide, and something that has the power and influence to reach people anywhere. The fact that black people have been disrespected by idols and other artists talking black on variety shows, and that African American vernacular English and blackness itself are seen as cool party tricks to perform, huge problem. Again, because I keep bringing it up, none of the idols I've listed here in this video at any point have done any of that nonsense again, right? Which is a great start. But the fact still stands that mocking black people is an accepted form of entertainment regularly seen on Korean television, that artists participate in every so often. And it's something that alienates and dehumanizes black fans. And if you want to make money, you shouldn't alienate your fans. Just saying. So, what comes next? First is education. These are fandoms where folks are super excited to start learning Korean and to start learning about Korean culture. They need to become spaces where folks educate themselves about the way that blackness and anti-blackness form a foundation in the industry and for these artists. Again, anti-blackness, the sort of mockery that we've talked about across this video, is normal on Korean television in a way that the reverse, specifically black people mocking Koreans on variety shows and whatnot, would never be. Stop that. Next, empathy. We're capable of so much care for the things and people that we're invested in. So why not the people in our fandom spaces? Fans in K-pop and K-hip-hop spaces need to practice active empathy for black fans, unpacking our own feelings about these artists' problematic past performances of blackness or brushes with anti-blackness. Instead of assuming every single comment on an idol's past is in bad faith and to start shit, consider perhaps that it's hard to come to terms with something actually harmful that few artists have ever apologized for. And then mute the person if empathy remains out of reach for you. Finally, we need to talk evolution. We need to evolve away from how fandom tends to dismiss anti-blackness as a cultural issue or mere ignorance that shouldn't be spoken or written about because it can harm the group. Artists trying to reach the world stage and do well on it shouldn't just be educated about these issues. They should be held accountable for the harm they've done that they're not apologizing for. Because at the end of the day, if you care more about harm to an artist than harm to the artist's fans, growth isn't going to happen. Your artist isn't going to evolve, and that means that they will alienate black fans. And again, we want these groups to be successful so we can keep supporting them. Even if they're not successful, we should support them. But stop that. Anti-blackness, stop that. Thank you for watching. If you want more of my content, feel free to follow me on WordPress, stitchmediamix.com, or on Twitter, which is Staichomancery. Links to everything I've discussed will be included below. Thank you.